Hey everyone, I'm back, and today we're going to be talking about Rambo. And this movie is directed by Sylvester Stallone and also stars him as John Rambo. And it is the fourth Rambo film, 20 years after the third film. And by that I mean that's when this movie came out. In 2008, the third movie came out in 1988. And I enjoyed this movie for what it was. I don't think it's great. I liked it better than 2 and 3. Much better than 3 for sure, and slightly better than 2, I would say, in terms of entertainment value. And if we're just judging these movies in terms of entertainment value, like with 2 and 4, 4 is much more entertaining to me than 2, although 4 has elements of it that's kind of laughable and incompetent at times and just unnecessary and doesn't need to be there. Not to say that 2 doesn't have anything that doesn't need to be there, but I'm not mad that I saw this movie, and I can come back to this film. And this movie is nice and short, only like 90 minutes, and also one other thing to mention about this movie is that it has an extended cut, and I think I've seen it once, but I don't remember anything about it. So, can't really comment on what they added in the extended cut. I know that it's like 8 minutes longer than the theatrical cut. According to the back of this cover, it's really small print. I don't think you're going to be able to read it. You can just look it up. And in this movie, I still liked following John Rambo. And I liked where he was in this timeline and what he's doing, and he's kind of just settled down and just doing his own thing. Much like what he was doing in the third movie, except he actually has a character this time around, and the film finds a way to make him somewhat interesting instead of the third movie where he's just any other random action hero who you just bring in and just throw him into that movie, and it's like, okay, this is happening. But in this movie, they actually give him a couple things, even if it's not like incredible. I do like that he's kind of on the edge, like, I don't really want to help, but eventually he decides to do that, and it does feel like a weird cut to like when he actually decides to help out, and it just felt like there was like a scene missing, which maybe that was in the extended cut. I'll have to rewatch it, because that's one of my issues with this movie, is that sometimes the editing doesn't really complement the film because it feels like certain scenes are missing. The way the movie is shot, there's just too many close-ups on faces, and it just becomes claustrophobic in a way that does not benefit the experience. Luckily, that does not hurt the action sequences, because it doesn't really appear in the action scenes all too much. More on that later. And there were some nice establishing shots sprinkled in the movie, and those looked nice, for sure. And throughout the entire film, like I've said earlier, I wasn't really bored. Like, it's the least boring Rambo sequel, if you ask me at least. And going into my complaints with this film, the CG blood looks pretty bad and dated, and there was also an explosion in this movie that looked pretty bad. And the CG in general just had a lot to be desired and just made the movie feel dated. There was also a flashback that was in the dream sequence thing. I don't understand why that was in the movie at all. Could have been cut entirely and the movie would be no different, is how I felt about it. And this movie is kind of cheesy in a way that doesn't really complement the tone, because most of the movie is like serious things going on, because we're up against like an army that's like taking in children and turning them into soldiers and just stealing them away from their families and just doing a whole bunch of horrible things, and they're established pretty well, especially in the opening scene. Those cheesy moments, sometimes I'm fine with it, but most of the time it just doesn't work. Not to say that it happens very often, I'm just saying when it does happen, for the most part, it just doesn't complement the tone, unfortunately. But going into the action, this movie, out of all the Rambo movies that I've seen, I haven't seen 5 yet, this one's the most violent out of all of them. Like, you see people getting shot down and killed, and there's like a blood flying all over the place. And it's like guts. And the third act especially has a lot of that. And the third act basically saves the movie for me. And even if this what we're being shown doesn't really look real, it's still fun. Like it pretty much just makes up for the entire film. Like I'm going to revisit that scene and just rewatch this movie just for that. Because it just leaves you on such a high note. It just makes up for a lot of the movie for me. Would I say this movie is good? Not really, but I did like it. I wouldn't necessarily say this is like a really great action movie that you need to check out. It's kind of a guilty pleasure for me. I can see myself coming back to this one. I enjoyed it enough. So check this movie out. I would recommend it despite my rating. And it might seem low, but it's how I feel. Just like half of it is like my own personal enjoyment, and the other half is like from an objective standpoint, and what helps the movie and what doesn't help the movie. Like the music in the movie, I don't even remember it at all because it was just forgettable to me. And sure, you could say like that's also subjective, but I feel as though there's also some objectivity to everything that I'm saying in this review. But all in all, I did have a good time while watching this movie. So with all that being said, I'm going to give Rambo, the fourth movie, for those who might get confused, because these titles are a bit confusing. It goes First Blood, Rambo First Blood Part 2, Rambo 3, Rambo, and then Rambo Last Blood. But anyways, a little off topic. With all that being said, I'm going to give Rambo a 5 out of 10. Normally, my lowest positive rating would be a 6, but this one was kind of a guilty pleasure, and I will come back to it. I had fun, and it's nice and short. That's also something that helps my experience. And a couple other things that I would like to mention is that the only Rambo movies overall that I enjoyed are 1 and 4. And so basically, I would recommend that you just watch those two, even though I haven't seen 5 yet, and I hear it's not that great, but I'll check it out. But for now, out of the 4 that I've seen, 1 and 4. Those are the only Rambo movies worth watching, in my opinion. Going over to 2 and 3. 3, you don't even need to watch. Like, I would be much happier if this fourth film was the third movie. Like, if I never watched 3 and this movie right here was the third movie, I would be fine with that, to be perfectly honest. And also, 2, I also gave both 4 and 2 the same rating, those being 5 out of 10. Technically, that means I liked both of them equally. However, I find 2 to be more boring overall. Like, as a package, like, there's things about it that I do like, don't get me wrong. Like, 2 has some great practical effects and explosions. All that stuff is great to watch, and some stunt work that's cool. Like, good things about 2, don't get me wrong, but as a whole, 4 is just more entertaining for me, and that's why I would much rather come back to 4. And also, it's just so much more violent, which I love. Like, I love the violence in 4. It's just so much fun for me. Thank you for watching my videos. As always, if you enjoyed this review, be sure to leave a like and comment down below what you thought of Rambo, and my social media links. They will all be in the description, so follow me there. And last but not least, subscribe to be a part of Foley Nation, and I'll see you when I get my next review up, and that is going to be for Kung Fu Panda 4. So look forward to that, but until I get that up, thank you for watching and have a great day.